Good afternoon, everyone. Today, we are glad to welcome you at our webinar, Quick and Easy Business Application Development with Microsoft Power Apps. My name is Anna Nefodova, and I will be the host of our event. I would like to present our two main speakers. Actually, it would be Evgeny Samiluk, Senior Microsoft Dynamics CRM and Power Apps Consultant at Infopulse, and Boyan Nazinik, CE Technical Specialist, Business Application at Microsoft. Our webinar will last 2 hours, and we would like to know that it will be recorded, and we will definitely share the recording at the presentation during this week. Please note that all the participants are in mute mode. We welcome you to ask questions, so please use the chat. Our speakers will be happy to answer the questions in the logical breaks or at the end of their speeches. If you have any additional questions in the end of the event or after the event, please also write to us and we will redirect all those questions to our speakers. I would like to tell you also briefly about Infopulse. Infopulse, as a part of the leading Nordic digital service company Tieto Every, is an international vendor of IT services across the globe. The company founded in 1991 and today has a team over 2,000 professionals. Infopulse is very proud of its long-term partnership with Microsoft, and you can find the key facts and figures about our successful collaboration on the slide below. Infopulse is recognized as Microsoft Azure Expert Managed Service Provider MSP in 2021. And in 2019, Infopulse was recognized as Microsoft Country Partner of the Year for Ukraine. Infopulse is presented in 7 countries across Europe and works in the areas of software R&D, application management, cloud infrastructure, and cybersecurity. Infopulse also has a very deep Power Apps expertise and is always ready to help you with your project implementation and consulting. Returning to the webinar topic of our today's discussion, we would like to know that today it is very actual to the market, it is very modern, it is really a fresh topic. During our last years, Infopulse intensively focused on Power Apps competence growth, developing different Power Apps projects of different level of complexity and almost in all possible industries. So working together with our customers, we noticed that customers face the same problems, we face the same challenges and during Power Apps implementation. And today we would like to find out some ways how to challenge with them and how to cope with them. The webinar will consist of 2 logical parts. The first part will be presented by our Microsoft guru, Boyan Nazinik, and it will cover general inspiring overview about Power Apps expertise and Power Apps opportunities. The second speech would be covered by Evgeny Samiluk, our Microsoft Dynamics and Power Apps consultant, and will go deep dive into Power Apps competencies and Power Apps development. Previously, we have talked a lot about us, about our expertise, and now we would like to talk about you and your pain points, maybe to answer your questions. For example, we would like to talk about how we can create apps without writing code. We would like to talk about licenses. We would like to talk about how we struggle together with maybe you face with some pain points during building the first application. We would also like to talk about integration. In the result of our today's webinar, we would like you to become a bit more self-confident, empowered, maybe understanding Power Apps development details. So we won't have enough time to solve all your problems or answer to all your questions about Power Apps development, but we really hope that we can show you the ways, maybe the roads, how to start and how to cope with Power Apps development. Thank you very much, and I am passing the word to our first speaker, Boyan Nazinik. Boyan, please.
Yes, Anna, hi, thank you for a great introduction. As you heard, my name is Boyan and I'm basically working in the CE region in what we call specialist team unit, responsible for customer engagement part of our portfolio, which is standard CRM applications. And I'm working as a technical specialist, also covering the Power Platform. Today's topic from my side is, as you can see on the screen, the title suggests everyone's platform for low-code transformation. And I would like to pause here for a minute just to explain how we transitioned from what we used to call low-code, no-code to low-code as we call it today. I'm guessing it was confusing for customers to understand what we mean when we say no-code. Does it really mean that the end user who's going to develop and build the application doesn't really have to have any kind of coding skills, IT background, or it really does require something? We realized that it could be confusing and that at the end of the day, it does require certain skills, but not to confuse you at the very beginning. If you have skills in standard tools like PowerPoint and you know how to use building blocks and move those objects around, if you know how to use Excel and you use the formulas and expressions, then you're already halfway through actually being able to do the low-code approach to Power Apps. What's important to say at the beginning is something that I usually don't do. It is actually using the quote, in this case, the quote from our CEO, Satya Nadella, who basically in one sentence is covering everything that we want to emphasize today. So he said that Microsoft 365, or as you used to call it, or had applications like Office or Windows, Dynamics 365 as our portfolio of business applications that are covering CRM like sales, customer service, marketing, and ERP like finance, supply chain, logistics, all together with Power Platform is something that we as a company are doing today. And this is the core of our business. And I think it's important to emphasize that for you to understand the volume of investment and engagement that's happening from our side as Microsoft towards the entire ecosystem, partners that are using the platform, and of course developing that and implementing to you as customers, and of course you as customers as our end users. So every year we are investing more and more. We are listening to what market is changing and how it's changing, all the business trends regardless the industry, and we are trying to incorporate that to really be the core of our business. But if we're talking about different businesses, if we're talking about different industries, we can summarize that all of us are experiencing basically the same type of challenges. And these bullet points or these facts here have been definitely aggregated even before COVID, and now with COVID we can point out even more that there's lots of challenges happening from either budget constraints, organizations not having enough budget to build or to create new applications, new systems that will meet those business requirements and their business goals, that they don't have the time or the resources to do it. Maybe they have insufficient IT support. Maybe they don't have people who are skillful enough. We know that creating such projects or developing such software or applications takes a lot of time, that lots of organizations have legacy systems, old systems, in-house built applications which were built maybe 5, 10, 20 years ago, and there's no people who are maintaining those apps. You cannot update them, so you are basically getting in behind to your competitors because of that. There's lots of security and compliance issues in that regards. And there's also, of course, due to the impact of COVID, there's more and more need in regards to how we can enable our colleagues, how we can enable every worker to be successful and to be on top of things while working remotely. So how we can meet those challenges as well. But if we're talking about things from how it looks from the customer perspective, the challenges are, of course, how to build more agile processes, how to meet those changing environment that we are all facing in the last year and a half, how to actually overcome the problems with technical skills. We don't expect people who are sitting in sales or in marketing departments that they have those technical skills that they can solve their problems by their own without involving IT or any kind of support they might need. And of course, how to actually do it from financial perspective. Can you actually invest a little and get a lot because of the nature of the platform that you want to use. So in our case, when we're talking about the Power Platform, which is the common name for different elements that we have, different components, and Power Apps is one of them, is basically picking where other solutions, those that I just mentioned, stopped or didn't meet. Some of them maybe are software as a service or cloud service solutions, but maybe some of the features that you have out of the box don't do the work. Maybe they're not sufficient. Maybe you have specific processes. Maybe your organization or your industry is having something that we don't provide with standard CRM application, for example. Maybe you have custom app development that your organization did invest time and money, but maybe it doesn't meet those requirements. There are still gaps that needs to be filled. And I truly believe that I can speak in behalf of myself and Microsoft and every partner that there is a huge space or missed opportunity that needs to be met with something as low-code development, or as we say, Power Apps or Power Platform. That platform, as you will see in the following part of this webinar, is definitely suitable for you to actually clear those challenges that you have and meet those expectations that every business has. The problem that happens regardless the industry is the fact that the analysis that have been done by different researchers like Gartner or IDC as global ones said that almost 500 million new apps is going to be built in the next few years, which is definitely more than the sum of all applications that has been built in the last 40 years till today. Which means that if we want to meet those expectations, then we have to be aware of the fact that we have limitations when it comes to talents, when it comes to people. We also have limitations when it comes to skills. So if 70% of new applications that will be built and developed by enterprise will use the low-code technologies, then I think it's a no-brainer for everybody that this is the technology, this is the platform, and this is the way how we should actually approach our business already, if we already haven't started with such. Just to keep few numbers, few figures in the presentation. As you can see, there's hundreds and thousands of organizations that are using our Power Platform every month. There's almost, I dare to say, we are close to reach to 100% of Fortune 500 companies that are using Power Platform, which doesn't mean that this is only meant for enterprises, for big companies. We also see huge growth for SMB, for small to medium business organization. And as you can see on the lower part of the slide, there are basically no industry that is not using it. It comes from healthcare, finance, manufacturing, all the way to technology, to FMCG. or even to public sector or international organizations like UN or whatnot. So it really does cover every industry. It really does cover all the companies globally. And this is happening because there is a constant demand for digital solution across the organization. When I say across the organization, we can summarize that what we keep getting from customers is that they're saying that they need to go faster, that they need to move their IT development from the current landscape to the low-code approach to high productivity applications in order to minimize cost, to get those applications faster and to meet those business needs faster and more accurately. On the other side, we also want to understand that if you have something as your own system or something as a legacy system, some CRM or ERP, then you definitely want to integrate that, what you're going to build in Power Apps, into your existing business data, which means that it has to be natively integrated. The data must communicate one way and the other, and we need to have a seamless experience for every user. And this is why we say the Power Platform is the right solution, because it is intuitive, it is flexible, it does require certain skills, as I said at the start, but it still enables everybody in the organization that they can start imagining about how they're going to solve their problem, how they're going to build it, and how they're going to launch or execute that solution. Which means that the standard users who were never part of application development can now become that each individual can start using Power Platform to resolve simple business problems, repetitive tasks that he has and his colleague doesn't, because he has different tasks and different activities, although they may be in the same department, they may be in sales, they may be in marketing, but it means that they can start solving their problems without asking an IT for support. But when it comes to more complex applications, when it comes to more complex business scenarios, we will see in Evgeny's part that it really does require IT pros or IT support in order to develop them. And when we talk about the Power Platform and Power Apps is, of course, the main component, we need to just see on the high level what we have in our portfolio. So on one side, we have Power Apps, as we said, a platform for you to build those applications. Those applications could be, as we call them, canvas apps that are meant for building for phones and tablets, apps that could be embedded in different applications, and also what we call a model-driven app or a desktop app, which is basically the same type of application that you have if you're already using Microsoft CRM, if you're using sales, customer service, field service, you already have that experience, you already have the same interface. Everything that you have in CRM is built on Power Apps. We have Power Automate to automate business processes, to create workflows and triggers that will initiate actions that will save you a lot of time for everyday repetitive tasks that maybe take you a few seconds every day, but if you multiply it by number of days, weeks, and months per year, you will see that there's hundreds of hours that could be saved by automating those tasks. We have Power BI to do any kind of visualization and analysis of your data, and we have something which we call Power Virtual Agents or chatbots that can also be built on the low-code principle in order to communicate whoever you want, internal or external audience, to have your chatbots placed on your sites, portals, or wherever you might find them useful. And of course, in order for all of that to work together, we think they can work as a standalone applications. You can just use Power Apps to build those applications. You can only use Power BI if you need analysis. You can only use Power Automate. But of course, the power and the beauty of entire platform when it works together. And you can, as I said, use Power Automate if you want to automate apps and processes. You can create a custom app with Power Apps to meet those specific business requirements. You can use the data from those apps into the Power BI and again use the data into chatbot in order to make it more accurate, to make it more meaningful when it comes to communicating with your customers. Just from the research perspective, for you to get a better view on how we progress in this regard, this is not us doing something this year, and this is a huge trend for this year and the next year. This is a continuation of our work and the efforts that have been recognized by Forrester in 2019, positioning us as a leader. Then the last year by Gartner, again being in the leader quadrant, and with the final recently released Forrester report for 2021, where we again are the leaders with our low-code. This means that Microsoft, as I pointed out in the first slide in such as code, is investing constantly in order to build the platform for your needs to be even better and to be even more relevant to your businesses. Now, we can say there are different vendors, there are different solutions that you might use for low code, and there are companies and organizations which are even not standard business application vendors who are investing in low code. But how we see things and why we believe that Microsoft is best positioned for the low code transformation is based on many factors. But first of all, we have, of course, every data that you create that you need is built, and it sits in Azure, which means that we have our data centers, which means that we have the global network, that everything that you already have in your Office 365 accounts or in Microsoft 365, when it comes to compliance, when it comes to regulations, when it comes to certificates, it's already there. So it's already meeting those demands when it comes to Power Apps. It's scalable. You can build it for simple organization, for small departments, and scale it even through big enterprise organizations, as we've seen for example, for Fortune 500. It's definitely, as I proved you in recent slides, an industry leader in the development. And it's not just using the features that you have in Power Apps or in Power Platform. It's about how we manage to give you all the functionalities that we have in different Microsoft clouds. When I say different Microsoft clouds, this is how we were positioning it maybe a year ago, 2 years ago, when we said you have one Microsoft cloud being business application, you have another one being Microsoft Azure, and you have a third one being Microsoft 365 or Office and Windows. But now we are moving from that terminology, we are going into one Microsoft cloud, because at the end of the day, it really is one Microsoft cloud, where all those components and all those applications are basically connected and work seamlessly together. And this is maybe one of the reasons why we see that the momentum is really here and it's growing, because we have a huge growth when it comes to usage of Power Apps. We have millions and millions of sessions when it comes to activating those chatbots. We had great acquisitions that help us to even go a step further to basically meet the challenges and the problems that organizations that are using legacy apps need. And this is what we meant by introducing the robotic process automation, automating tasks using legacy applications and modern applications. And that we, at the end of the day, are adding hundreds and hundreds of new features every year, because you need to be aware of the fact that Microsoft is releasing new features twice per year, as we call it, spring and autumn release. So in April, we release hundreds of new features, and then in October, 6 months later, we introduce with hundreds and hundreds more new features. So it means every year there's constantly new features coming, new development, new investment in this area in order to really be relevant and to be on top of your mind. But this is just an explanation how it looks today, but also how it's going to look in the future, where we want to develop or grow even more. So one of the areas would be how to bridge or how to blur the digital and the physical world, how to use 3D models, how to use AI even more, how to use geofencing, how to use HoloLens and augmented reality, how we can use the power of artificial intelligence and have it integrated into Power Apps if your business scenarios require something like that, how we can help you to create that, maybe not even moving from Teams as a collaboration platform that in COVID times we are using more and more, how you can actually use the data platform and how you can use the entities and the relations that you already have in our database and not even leave Teams interface and build apps there, or how we can actually help you to connect with different data sources, regardless where they're coming from, whether staying or being in cloud or maybe being on-premise data that is also a common case. So, as I said at the start, we see that as a platform which is everyone's platform, once again, for low-code transformation. This means that if you're talking about basic users who don't have an IT background, who don't have those necessary skills that you might think you need for such approach, we call them citizen developers, and they can build solutions fast, as I said, if they know how to use Excel formulas, if they know how to use the logic there, if they know how to move objects with Visual Studio or maybe with PowerPoint, they're already halfway there. But if they want to customize that, if they want to extend it, if they want to use integrations with different platforms, if they want data coming from different sources to be in that place, in that application, then definitely, as you might imagine, it would require a little bit more IT knowledge, and then we're talking about power or pro developers. And then if you really go a step further and want to assure that everything will be compliant, that there won't be any security issues, that you want to do some complex stuff, then we're talking about the IT pros. But the development itself is not an individual thing. It's a team sport. You can have your people who can do their apps, who can participate in trainings, who can do it in their own pace, who can create a simple app and use it just on their phone for their simple tasks. But in real life, when it comes to really true business value that this application, this platform can bring to you, then we're talking about how those employees, how those citizen developers can actually use their own time and knowledge to build something, but then extend it by using the help and assistance, of course, of people who have more coding skills, developers and IT support in their organization to really build and scale that application to entire organization. And if we see then from a simple thing how to improve processes all the way how you can modernize your business, there are lots of examples. So a simple example would be that an individual can create an application and use AI features in order, for example, to scan a business card. And then when he scans the business card, it can automatically send all the data into the CRM, and it can automatically create a new contact or a new lead by populating all the necessary fields from the data from your business card. It can be used to create an expense approval application for somebody who scans their invoices and documents and needs a quick response from his or her manager. He can use that on his own time, by his own skills, without interference from IT. But also, if we're talking about doing more complex work, extending legacy applications, creating flows for example, data coming from SAP or appraisal process that's coming from HR, then of course it will require more skills, and then maybe that work won't be done by that individual. Maybe he will give ideas or inputs, but maybe IT will handle it. It will be handled to IT. And of course, if they want to go even a step further to create, for example, complex financial reporting, to create solutions that will be used cross-department, then of course we're talking about more coding and more complex things, which can definitely meet such complex requirements. When it comes to data, so one of the concerns is always, okay, but maybe the organizations that you are showcasing or referring to are the organizations which are big, modern, already transformed, but we don't have such scenarios, or we use our data different way, or we share or store our data in some on-premise location, or we're using SharePoints. It really doesn't matter, actually. We created a matrix, as you can see here, that helps you to understand, okay, so do I need to integrate with something? Do I need to, what are the key features that are interested to me? Who am I targeting this to? So is it something that, as I said, is every individual can build because he wants to create a simple app that will pull the data from SharePoint, present it in an application that he will go through on his phone? Or are we talking about super users who are using our data model, our database, which we call now Dataverse, or as we used to call it, common data service, or are we talking about using SQL on Azure or any kind of on-premise data? So regardless the scenario, regardless the, let's say, the maturity of your organization, there is a solution for each of those needs. And in the following session, which will be led by Evgeny, you will have the chance to understand more deeper what it means by that. And when we're talking about the platform, you need to understand that, as I said, it's scalable, it's extensible, it's something that can work on its own. So you can say, I'm interested only in Power Apps, and I can start working with that. But if you're talking about adding business value, then definitely you are relying on the existing applications, or even thinking about buying both CRM or ERP applications, and then use Power Apps to maybe fill certain gaps that these applications cannot meet out of the box. There are different there's a different logic, I mean, connecting different rules and flows and functions. The data model, which sits in the background with all the entities and relationships, is basically enabling you that data will smooth move from one app to another, or from one system, and be visible in your Power App if there is a need for that. And of course, we built hundreds of connectors and APIs that you might use in order to connect with very specific applications, or with different systems which are maybe not Dynamics or Microsoft systems. So you might have even a Salesforce as your CRM, and you can have a simple Power App built in our platform, embedded and integrated in Salesforce CRM for an end user who will just see the data and who will be able to manipulate with the data without even understanding what's happening in the background, without even knowing that this part is actually built by Microsoft, by Power Platform. And once again, how innovative and how creative and how complex your processes might be, it really depends on you. But we want to assure you that the platform that we have is almost unlimited. So if we're talking about advanced scenarios, how to actually, as I said, bridge or blur physical and digital, you can use Azure Services and IoT functionalities. You can go with mixed reality, with geospatial, with HoloLenses. We can use AI Builder, as we call it, AI features, cognitive services from Azure, process automation for legacy apps, or using chatbots, or even go a step further, integrate with different platforms, with Teams, with portals, or using GitHub as a central repository, great place where you can get all the data, all the documents, all the information that you might need for you to go a step further. So in the context of being a beginner or being a very professional one, once again, you can start with the Power Platform and its core components. You can extend that to Azure Services. You can go even a step further, use Azure Synapse Analytics. You can use Microsoft Graph to collect the data coming from your internal applications, from Exchange, what you exchange internally between emails or other channels, and you can actually really create something great out of it. And to come to the end, in order to assure you that if those things that I've just shared and that you will hear in the next 90 minutes might be complex for you because it's something new for you, we decided to build something which we call Center of Excellence Start Kit, which is basically a collection of components and tools that are basically designed for you as beginners to help start with developing your applications, with developing your processes, and developing a strategy that will assure you that the error that can always happen if you're doing something new, if you're building applications, is brought to minimum, to actually use the metrics, analysis, best practices, and frameworks built on Power Platform that will help you to actually succeed in your efforts, regardless of the fact if you're doing it on your own, if you're doing it internally without any help or assistance of partner organizations such as Infopulse. This is what you have for free. You can visit, you can check, and you can be sure that things that you do are being done by using the best practices of somebody who already did that very successfully. And as basically as the last slide, just to assure once again that everything that we're talking about today is built on Azure, it sits in Azure Cloud, so it means that it's protected by Azure. It means that the reliability that we can provide as Microsoft is uncomparable. And once again, all the standards or the security and compliance protocols are already there. If we're talking about EU, everything that we know as standards from GDPR to ISO, everything is there. And of course, having such platform, having such surroundings around you, I guess, assures that the security and everything around that is definitely built the way how it should be. With that, I can only thank you for giving me the chance to build awareness around the Power Platform, to do basically set the ground and introduction for the best part of today's webinar. So thank you once again, and I can just for the end say that as of today we are starting with our Microsoft Build conference, which is more focused on developers, but it shouldn't concern any of you coming from a business part. There will be lots of amazing sessions that will cover exactly the topics that we are talking about today: how to build apps, how to use different data sources, how to leverage that. So if you have the time from today afternoon till 27th of May, please join our conference, and I hope you will have a great time there, as same as I hope you will have a great time with my colleague Eugene. With that being said, thank you once again, and handing it over to Eugene, to Evgeny.
Dear Boyan, thank you very much for such inspiring presentation, and I'm passing the word to our Infopulse expert. Please, Evgeny. Evgeny, Senior Microsoft Dynamics CRM and Power Apps Consultant at Infopulse.
Hello, can you see my screen?
Perfectly. Thank you very much.
And can you hear me well? Yeah?
As well.
Okay. Okay, hello, dear listeners. My name is Evgeny, and I'm the Senior Microsoft Dynamics CRM and Power Apps Consultant at Infopulse. Today we'll try to convey to you the basic and not only principles and approaches about developing application with Power Apps. You will really be excited with the ongoing information and the different angles from which I propose you to talk it about. So let's start. The first and the main question of my presentation is, are you ready to fail your Power Apps application? If yes, here you will find detailed instruction how to do this. If no, I'll explain how to avoid almost all pitfalls, what and how we need to consider before the implementation, where is the truth in the points of simplicity and complexity, and the final round, the key aspects for success implementation. So let's start our failing. So I'm kidding, of course, I'm kidding. Now seriously, today we'll talk a lot about the Power Apps product, a lot about it and the things around. Directly about the key aspects and principles of building application on Power Apps, about types and differences between them. Also, we'll try to define key impacts and traps when choosing the appropriate technology. We'll consider the licensing features and talk about multiplexing effect. I'll explain how to define the best way from existing range of interface inside Power Apps. And finally, we'll emphasize the roadmap for success implementation with a couple of examples. In general, this webinar is aimed at those who, first of all, who doesn't know anything about Power Apps and wants to know about that stack. Secondly, for those who tried and failed their first application. And thirdly, to those who know about it and have a successful implementation, but still something is missing in the result. So let's take a look at all the key aspects one by one and try to determine what is the power-ups, when the power-ups, and most importantly, why the power-ups. So let's go. The agenda in its classic view for today, acquaintance with power-ups. This will be a short course about the stuff around the platform, which we are going to discuss later. Actually, some of the basic things have already been discussed, but I need them for my part of presentation from a slightly different angle. Further, we will touch on the key pains that we hear from our customers and which we are solved. Then we go over the key aspects of licensing and architectural principles. Then let's talk about the interface and its limitations. Further, let's compare in more detail the options for the security approaches. The final time point will be a discussion about application logic. And finally, we will discuss all the steps that will lead us to the successful implementation for application. Okay, so let's start with the short overview. Please don't sleep in this part. It is a background information that takes us on the same wave. Sorry, so please just listen. It's important. So PowerUps is a fast-growing low-code platform that is easy to customize, scale, and maintain. I think all you know that this is the part of Microsoft Power Platform with several products which easily integrates into the huge number of products and services that actually we are using right now. So let's take a quick look at the PowerUps product line and go through the main features. PowerUps is a part of the Power Platform, which also includes data analysis and reporting in Power BI, Power Automate automation, and Power Virtual Agents. All we know that Power Platform is located in a single Microsoft ecosystem and make it easy to connect with Dynamics 365 and Office 365 package like Outlook, Exchange, Teams, and SharePoint, and with ERP systems like finance and operations, thanks to integrations. And finally, Azure. It's a powerful cloud platform with a lot of capabilities inside. And the last point, PowerUps has its own CDS database that allows you to securely store and manage data used in business application. So let's move forward and consider the main PowerUp feature. It is the low-code principle. Okay, everyone who has ever been involved into product implementation now know how it's difficult to survive to the end in the battle between the standard part of customization and custom coding. A huge part of this battle is occupied by the possibility to quickly and easily customize without deep specific programming skills. Almost all of you will say to me that it is impossible, but not with PowerUps actually. PowerUps is going with so-called low-code technology that allows you to easily and quickly set up the necessary interactions. Let's take a look at what low-code platforms are all about. Low-code platforms are the platforms that make it easy to build application thanks to drag and drop, or for example, selecting with the mouse ready-made functional blocks using constructors and editors of the forms. In this case, the data types are prepared in advance. The issue of data security has also been resolved by providing role-based access to the data. Here, Excel-like formulas are allowed as well, and the most important, almost without programming. So, in general, low-code platforms are fast and easy to design, deploy, and use it in business applications. Moreover, if you want to try any product with low-code approach, you are ready to build your POC fast and with minimal cost. It is really great benefit, and I'll explain how it works later, okay? Oh, about the slide, sorry. It's something like Boyan presented to you. As you can see, according to the Gartner Magic Quadrant, this is an international reputability consulting company. Power Apps is located in the upper right corner, in the corner of the leaders of low-code platforms in the world. At the same time, the platform is rapidly developing and improving because several platform updates are released per month. Oh, sorry. I lost my screenshot. Yes. Okay. Sorry. Okay, now you are familiar with the main Power Apps benefit. It's a low-code platform approach. So let's take a look into what inside the Power Apps and which modules it hides from us. The Power Apps consist of Canvas, model-driven, and portals. Canvas involves the development of applications via free arrangement of data on the screen. It's similar like how to create a slide in PowerPoint. You can simply drag and drop items onto the canvas and apply Excel-like formulas for interaction between these elements. Model-driven apps is a model-based application development. It involves placing elements in a ready-made business interface and works only with the Dataverse and CDS database. Power Portals are a low-code development of externally accessible websites that allow users outside of your organization to log in with different credentials or create and view data in the Microsoft Dataverse or even browse content anonymously. The key features of the Power Apps are strong building platforms that allows you to simplify development thanks to low-code approach. It has own connection to Dataverse database, or you can easily go with any other database. It has a lot of out-of-the-box interfaces. Also, it has a model-driven interface. Also, it can be done with mobile or tablet interface. And in the background, and in some cases on the front, it uses business processes, rules, and plugins. So let's move forward and try to figure out the interface we can work with. As you know from the previous slide, we have 3 types in Power Apps, which have their own features. In almost all implementation, we use 2 of them. It's Canvas and model-driven. So let's take a deeper look at the design features. Sorry. We have 2 options of development with design. The first is ready-made. The second is free for you ideas. Both of them have pros and cons, so I propose you to check them. Canvas has a variety in devices on which it reproduced and applications in which it is built in. At the same time, the model-driven has a standard layout that can be played in a browser on all devices. The second feature is the variety in the arrangement of elements on the form. In Canvas, you are practically not limited by anything, but in the model-driven, we are quite limited in this regard, but at the same time, we are standardized actually, and this leads us to simplify and speed up the visual part of customization. The next step will be the sets and collections available to us in the applications. On the one hand, Canvas collections are more flexible and can visually more accurately adapt to the requirements. But at the same time, the model-driven will be ready-made and takes into account years of user experience and offers advanced settings for views or forms right out from the box. The last point will be the atomic level of design. These are the icons and multimedia. In my experience, there was a case actually when the visual display of an icon next to a button was more important than amounts of work on functionality. So the canvas is 100 steps ahead since it can more accurately and beautifully display design elements such as icons or any multimedia elements, I don't know, for example, galleries, but at the same time, it requires sufficient efforts to adjust. So, as you can see, we don't have compromise between two approaches, but now you are familiar with pros and cons for both of them. So we are familiar with the platform and design options. Let's find out what functions are available to us in application. In fact, we have a set of predefined functions that we can use to customize our application. All these functions are described in the official Microsoft documentation. You can read it and check, but considering the approach to their implementation, you will notice that all of them are really straightforward. At the same time, their set is not complete, and we must take this into account. And moreover, some functions have limitations, and you need to be aware of this part as well. Some of them you can see on the screen. They grouped, and they look like Excel formulas or some logical expressions. In my personal point of view, everyone who will try these formulas to develop any simple application will not face many difficulties when considering them. Finally, we know the types and how it is easy to code thanks to Power Apps. Now let's take a look into how we can make our application friendly to other systems, of course, because we can't even imagine only one Canvas application without any connectors. As you can see, we have a variety of ready-to-use connectors in our kit that we can easily use right out from the box. If any of these connectors cannot meet your requirements, you can create your custom one. For example, the most popular connector is the connector to Teams, which help us, send the messages with the direct destiny. It's really straightforward. Just use a connector, specify the receivers, and create the button to send with. I think you're a little bit tired with the theory, so let's have a look into real cases, into real pain that you may face during the implementation. Okay, now you are familiar with base things we can manage and use in a simple way without additional efforts. But now you will see how they dip the rabbit hole. It is real site of implementation which can break our application in a few seconds. We usually hear the same things from our customers. It's like we had an experience in the implementation, but the application did not reach production. Or, for example, we have different kinds of systems on-premise and cloud. Can we use them together? Or we tried Power Apps, but it's impossible to code without developer. Or, for example, we need to understand, is it possible to try the stack with POC without big budget? So let's consider them one by one, and I'm convinced that we have an answers and we can move you forward in these points. The first and the main pain in the implementation, it's bad design. You can do so many cool integrations and connectors, but it will be in vain if the common user finds your application inconvenient. Typically, end users have a big impact on whether or not an application will be on production. I think all you know that involving of the new product go through from the stage of rejection to the stage of excitement. It's a real case, and the understanding what we need to avoid is the main bullet in your clip, actually. So the first item will be the UX factor. Let's consider different power-ups types in a slice of design. In this point, we have two completely opposite designs. The first is Canvas. Here we have a powerful visualization tool, but it requires a quiet type to implement. In most cases, the required functionality is simplified in favor of functional tricks, and the application becomes visually unpleasing. I think that all this happens because we are accustomed to the cool design in our devices, like telephones or mobile phones or something like this, and all kinds of bright themes and animations and beautiness, and yes, it all affects onto the end users. They used to think everything beautiful and understandable. This is one of the main problems with design. It is not accepted because it's ugly. The second is a model driven. Here we have a ready-made business interface and we don't have so much choice in visual components. That's why we call it non-beloved, because we forced to put up with it. Sorry. The next point which affects the design is wrong expectations. All users used to think cool design with clear interface, and each application set the bar higher and higher. And of course, we can do something like this, but usually it is just for internal team purposes or limited group of people. So this application will not be released to the world. So mistaken expectation for a cool design can lead to application rejection as well. One more point of wrong expectation could be a habit of working in Excel. Oh, all we love power Excel sheets, but it is wrong approach to manage business processes. Of course, we can use some general useful Excel features like filtering or sorting data in view mode, but definitely we shouldn't expect the same in Power Apps application. The last point of wrong expectation will be visual data presentation as a portal. Some services provide us exactly this interface, and it could be wrong to expect the same in Power Apps. In fact, for these purposes, we have separate product named Power Apps Portal, where we can see page data view like a site. And the third point, which affect to design, is wrong layout. We have a variety of layout options for displaying data visually. All of them depend not only on the list of devices on which the application will be running, but also on the user experience and the convenience of working with it. So the conclusion is we need to manage our expectation with taking into account UX factor, layout, and the final devices to work with. Okay. So the next step in choosing the best approach is considering what inside your pocket. Almost all existing businesses are already involved into a big infrastructure, and it's not a simple case just to automate a small part. Usually it touches a lot of adjust systems and connectors, which we have to take to account. So the first point of business analysis should be the existing ecosystem definition. So the key points we need are define all cloud services and on-premise systems that we want to connect. Next, determine whether we will have Azure as integration tool between our application and existing systems, but probably we may have it already because it's common to have Azure. It is also necessary to determine the capabilities of all connectors for restrictions and security. Also, we should do not forget about legal aspects, such as, for example, a restriction on storing certain types of data in the cloud. I know about these cases, so it's really important. Then once we understand the entire ecosystem, we need to discuss whether we will use the following technical capabilities. It is a user interface. It will be a canvas or model driven, or we will additionally need, I don't know, PCF components. Then it is necessary to decide whether we will embed our application somewhere, such a portal or SharePoint page. Also, we should think about offline mode of application. And then will our logic go beyond the standard capabilities? Then which type of connectors we'll use? And we need just keep in mind that some of them are premium and required additional licensing. And the last point is how the security of the application will be solved. Sorry. The next mandatory aspect is to decide on licensing. In fact, there are very wide capabilities here, and I will talk about them a little bit later in a separate topic of presentation. Okay. In short, we can flexibly apply per user and per application licensing. We can also use power-ups thanks to the built-in license as a part of your Office 365 subscription. Also, we must remember that any application requires not only a license, but also a capacity, both execution and storage. So check all these aspects before the license strategy will be chosen. And the conclusion that we need to decide the licensing strategy not only for internal user, but also for external users if your implementation require it. Okay, so we know how to screw up implementation with design, and of course about what architectural and licensing aspects we need to forget. I'm kidding, of course, in the contrary. Now we are familiar with design and architectural features. Also, we defined basic licensing and, of course, low-code technology. In fact, we come up to one of the main questions of this webinar. Is it really so easy thanks to low-code or no? The answer will be, it depends. A lot of stuff could be done without code in Canvas thanks to drag and drop technology. But in fact, you must use formulas even in the very simple model. So very basic Canvas application will contain formula for base interaction. we cannot see the same about model-driven. There we have ready-made tool, which definitely enough for base business applications. The same about Power Automate. Only very basic functions can be done without code. And what is definitely cannot be done without development are PCF controls for Canvas. There we can go, for example, with a React page with any logic inside. And there we are limited only by programming language features. The same about plugins for model-driven. There we can apply a lot of additional functional blocks like retrieving data from external data sources, or for example, advanced calculations. Underlining this all, the case suggestions is to start your first application as simple as possible. Avoid tricky logic and advanced control. Now, please ask yourself, is it really so easy, and is there no complexity on the way? Of course, no. At least we need to take into account not only UI complexity, but business logic complexity as well. We need to control logic thanks to decision rules and be able to manage it easily. The same for rules on the form. We can have so much rules for hiding fields, for example, locking them on the form depending on the specific conditions. So we need to take it to account. The last point is about security rules. For me, it's the most important part of of application. We need not only manage security access, but it should be transparent for customizing. So the conclusion of this part is define security model first, then try to resolve UI complexity through the application type. So let's move forward and consider perfect picture from IT. Indeed, it's a joke. It's a joke slide about situation when everything works perfectly and as expected without failures and errors. In this case, you really don't need to automate anything. But in fact, we all perfectly understand then this is impossible, and most likely your horse is already died. Therefore, if you don't know how to start, then try with, for example, business analysis. This will give you the basic principles which your team really needs. Next, I propose you to work with the business. They definitely have a lot of ideas and inspiration to implement. Next, try ready market cases. Sometimes experience from existing solutions too important if you are at the dead end. And most important, when approaching the technology, you can always spy on which areas have already been successfully implemented. Just imagine what if you already among these fields of activities. So let's take a look. Here I propose you to find your case which you want to involve. Here I represented the base field of activities from our portfolio. It's an experience we've got from previous cases with successful implementation. Here you can see decision-making solution. It was committees workspace with voting regarding principal questions. Audit solution, it was the questionnaires regarding some audit activities with photo attachment as a confirmation. Any kind of mobile application with work on fields in offline mode. And workplace reservation solution. It was really great experience regarding automatic room booking due to the pandemic. As you can see, we have a lot of experience that can inspire you to create your first POC application with minimal efforts and without scare how to fail it. After all I mentioned about all existing knowledge about UI, design, and connectors, you can easily try your first Power Up application from the scratch. And ready-made templates, it's really what you need. They contains ready-made components of individual solution with a full set of functionality and connectors. Just imagine there could be ready-made application for your business. Just try these templates. Okay, we are moving to the third part of my presentation. It is about key pains that we try to resolve, and about how to not screw up your first application, of course. It's also about subject area and deeper look at architectural principles and key constraints and some architectural pitfalls that await us during the implementation of the Power Apps. Okay, let's try to figure out non-functional requirements. First of all, I propose to you to understand how big an elephant is waiting for us. It's important part because directly on this stage the pretty application becomes a big monster, and I think that the number of users in the systems has a huge impact on what licensing strategy we will go with. So we need to count everyone. We need to count internal users. We need to count external users, all groups, and possible business units. For example, with 5 users, we can easily apply the SharePoint plus Canvas approach based on a built-in license from your Office 365 subscription. With 15 users, it makes sense to consider the approach of the module-driven Power Apps. There we can easily manage a small number of users. With 500 users, we will most likely have not only external users, but an extended groups within business units as well. This is already a full-fledged infrastructure for the implementation of Azure SQL with processing capabilities. And finally, with 5,000 and more users, we shouldn't think about Power Apps at all. So the number of users greatly impact into the licensing and the choice of technologies. The next requirements, of course, will be the range of technology used. We need to clearly understand which set of technologies will be best in the context of 5, 50, 500, or 5,000 users. The last important nuance is the amount of data processed. The key impact here is the constraints that we have when receiving and processing the data. Okay, so once we are familiar with the amount of users impact to the application architecture, I think we can plan another architectural basis. It's environment setup. Here you can see the diversity of environments that are accessible for us. All of them have their pros and cons. For example, we can start with free personal environment which is absolutely free for any employee and contains premium components, but there we can't test some role-based features because only one user per environment available. You can't share this environment to anyone. The next example about trial environments. They are limited in a time, but available for all users. The most inconvenience in this approach is that we need to recreate the environment every time to continue the development. With that, we need to keep in mind about the transferring solution with all customizations inside. The last example is the common example, is the common environment schema with sandbox as a dev, test, maybe training and pre-production environment, and production environment as a main. You need to know that the best practices for this approach is using at least one full license for developer purposes. Okay. We already talked about some base stuff regarding licensing, but let's try to emphasize key aspects. We have free embedded power-ups licensing because sometimes it is a part of any other license of subscriptions. In this case, we can use it, but it's quite limited in capabilities and it has performance limits. Despite, I suggest you this way if you want to try your first application as POC. It's a good way to start. We also have per application and per user licensing. The key differences you will find, of course, in the latest Microsoft licensing guide. Why I say latest? Because it changes sometimes, and you need to keep in eye with it. And what you need to know is some specific options like Power Automate, portals, or additional capacity licensing, which also need to be paid separately. Honestly, I have simple license table, but it was just drawn from Power Apps licensing guide, which I suggest you to consider more precisely. So we can skip it, but you can find it in the presentation source file after the webinar. Okay, we just went through the licensing options, which honestly not so interesting, but now we are on the tricks that we must to know, really good tricks. One of the key nuances which I want to clarify is the data capacity and call limits we have through the license. We have not only limited storage, but performance impact to our application if don't care about this. So we need to keep in mind this point as well. The second nuances is additive character of Power Apps per app license. What does it mean? It means that one user can be licensed twice via per application license, and the result will be not 2 applications available, but 4. In other words, the per application license is stackable. The third great pitfalls inside license range is multiplexing effect. What does it mean? For example, we have Canvas application using Dataverse as a data source, and we embedded the Canvas application into SharePoint site page. Imagine this picture. And in this case, all non-licensed by Power Apps license users will affected by multiplexing. This works even for external SharePoint users. So what is the workaround we have here? We need to provide for all SharePoint site readers appropriate license, or we have workaround, just try to rebuild your process somehow and reach the manual data entering to SharePoint, because in case of manual data transformation, the multiplexing effects does not apply. The same actually for custom connectors. If we're using, for example, PCF controls and display data from Dynamics 365 from restricted entities, like from the Dynamics 365 for sales, we need to be licensed as well. And this is so-called indirectly access to data. So the conclusion, please keep in mind all these key features when you try to find perfect license strategy of your application. Okay, this is the simple license table. You can find it later. Okay, so let's move forward to the next point, and this is app interface considering. Actually, we already talked a lot about interfaces, so let's move on this point rapidly. The general points to display our application in the most convenient way will be a proper device choosing. To help this, we need to know all possible variants of embedding and final interfaces. So for Canvas, we have web view, mobile phone view, and tablet view. For model-driven, we have its own business interface running in browsers across all devices. And additional additional feature, we can define the possibility to build in the Canvas applications into SharePoint page, Teams, or even in model-driven. Here I collected all the points we discussed before about UI in pros and cons table view. Please find this comparing in the enclosed to webinar presentation. So let's move forward to the next point and discover the security options. Here you can see the different security models that we can apply in frames of Power Apps implementations. First of all, let's take a look into Dataverse security. I consider this security model is more advanced than any from this list because it has security roles model based on the entity, teams separating business units level security and fields level security and application level security and so on and so on. The second point from my personal evaluation goes to SharePoint security model. It is also developed site group security model with almost all elements level security. The third point goes to Azure security. Here we have group-based security model and a lot of other Azure policies. And the last one is so-called UI security. It's when you try to restrict some elements using UI approach. Here you can see the information about compromises that expect us during implementation of the application. The first compromise is about the expectation. Do we ready for big project from the scratch, or we can do simple MVP and then define the future of this technology? The second is about license approach. It's do we really ready to pay at the very beginning or not? The third is about effort. Do we have competence for development, or we can try with low code customization? Once you answer these questions, you will find your perfect approach. Let me check. So this is the last part of security presentation. Here you can see some proposed combinations with security model you can start with. All these points we've already discussed before, so I propose you to move forward and check this slide in the enclosed webinar presentation, okay? Now we are on the pit stop, and we can spy what is exactly under the hood. It's about the pure development and different combination of logic we have in our garage. So let's discuss them and what they in charge. Power Automate. Power Automate, it's more about process automation via workflow between our applications and services. Business rules, it's about interaction on the model-driven forms. It's like hiding, it's like setting mandatory, or for example, locking fields. Logic App, it's more about connection. It's really powerful tool which helps you to integrate the wide range of applications and services. Webhooks. It is something like subscription onto the actions in your system with possibility to retrieve action information to endpoint. Azure Functions. It's a serverless solution that extends the existing Azure platform with service capabilities. Front-end custom code. It means you can perform a lot of logic in the background in any mode. Plugins, it's a backend extension for model-driven, which allows you to expand the interaction capabilities. And PCF controls, it's a control that we can use to extend standard canvas capabilities. So all this range covers almost all needs in extending or scaling the functional capabilities of Power Apps. So now you know about technical aspects, and now you're ready to consider first steps for the implementation. So we need to answer the question: could it be enough to go without coding? If not, choose the technology. Should we change technical background due to the licensing impact? And the last one is to check the performance. If will not predict performance scale, we can go to the cost trap. Below, I prepared the table in compare view with technologies we may use, and please check them into enclosed of webinar presentation as well. Okay. Now we're on the finish line. I convinced that now we are ready to the journey of the Power Apps implementations with knowledges in how to do the first step and how to avoid a lot of traps. And let's emphasize our steps to success implementations. First, discover business demands. Then validate your digital strategy. Then be aligned to enterprise architecture. Then ensure your capabilities. Then select your architecture. And finally, start your first application. And I really wish you good luck in this. And hope my presentation was interesting and useful for you. Please ask the questions if you have something to ask. Actually, I prepared some bonus slides in the end of the presentations. On the presentation, please find them in the presentation when we send it to you. There you can see There you can see the different architectural approaches with different combination based on power-ups. Also, there are some screenshots with examples and so on with different architecture approach like Canvas plus ERP, like pure model driven, or for example, like Canvas with SharePoint. So that's all from my side that I want to talk about, and please ask the questions if you have something to add.
Evgeny, thank you very much for your speech. Actually, we have some questions, but they are regarding the organizational part, regarding the recording and all the slides. So it's a pleasure for me to add that we will share both the recording and the presentations after the event, I guess during this week, maybe tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. So please check your emails, and we will be happy to share all the content with you. Right now, I don't see any additional questions. So please, colleagues, if you have any, put them in the chat while our expert is still will be able to answer them. If not, please also use the email and write us any questions anytime. We will transfer those questions to our speakers. Right now, I don't see any additional questions. So, Evgeny, thank you again for your slides, for your speech, and for some useful inputs. Hopefully, this information was valuable for you and will help you to understand the easier and the better way of Power App development. And hopefully, we will see you at our future events during this summer. Thank you very much and have a great evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you all. Bye.
You. Bye.